So hello everybody. I was just trying to fix my VR headset, just like it is usual for office hours. Things break, but I wanted to welcome everybody and well, thanks for coming. So I've prepared a few things I wanted to get through, but also just wanted to welcome everybody, and I'll start sharing my screen here. And so this is the office hours. It's one of three that I've planned for at least this semester. So I still operate in terms of semesters, and I know that on Coursera things are more fluid than that. But so currently I am in the winter semester, and it is pretty cold in Michigan. So this is the office hours that I wanted to hold, and I wanted to specifically target the third course of the XMOOC specialization. If you are enrolled in that or thinking about enrolling in that specialization, it consists of three courses. The first is focused on issues and trends and also strategy, and it's really like a broad overview of the concepts and technologies. The second one is really focused on design thinking, prototyping, both with physical materials and digital prototyping. And the third course is this one. This is the third course that I wanted to focus on. It is focused on development. It is the course that on the rating side is a little bit lower than the others. And I think it's primarily because even though my philosophy and my warnings are this is not a course about Unity, a lot of students still come in with the expectation that I teach you how to work with Unity. Whereas my philosophy about this course is that I teach you how to approach XR development in a variety of platforms, including Unity, and then also including Unreal Engine and WebXR. So there's a lot of stuff that I put into this course, and I'm thinking about building out new materials for this course. It's a little bit of a known issue, I would say. I would like to offer more hands-on guidance. So the way I've structured today's office hours is I'll just go through a few of the things focused on this third course, specifically the assignments that we have here on the right. So how to build your 3D scene. And this office hour today is focused on A-frame. So WebXR is one of the three paths I support in this specialization. And then there will be two more office hours focused on Unity. And actually both will be focused on Unity. One I will dedicate to just virtual reality with Unity, and that's in about 2 weeks. I think it's on a different day, it's a Monday. And then we'll have one on AR with Unity again. So I wanted to separate those out. So today I have a lot of stuff I wanted to show doing AR, VR with A-frame. So coming back to this MOOC for a second, so there is a series of assignments, and if you haven't taken this course yet, so I'll walk you quickly through it. It is like the other courses, built over 4 weeks, and the first one is an introduction, but we get started right away. We're making the jump to 3D design and development, which is targeted at people that have previously developed maybe web interfaces or mobile applications and now want to learn how to pick up some of the new tools. Including WebXR, so A-frame is what I choose there. We could go deeper and do 3JS, but with my students, I usually do, they come from a broader variety of backgrounds, not just computer graphics, and so we're using A-frame, and I'll tell you a little bit more about A-frame in this office hour as well. And then, you would build out essentially 2 projects, and it becomes a little bit more immersive. Your VR scene starts out with a basic VR experience and then becomes more immersive. And in the AR portion, which is each of these modules here on the left is essentially designed to be completed in 1 week. So in the third week, you would do an AR scene. So many of you may be familiar with, and maybe this is right where you are. And so thanks for coming. If you're interested in some of the other office hours, so today you can also ask questions about Unity or Unreal Engine, but I will focus on A-frame for the next 30 minutes, I would say. And I'll just, what I had in mind is I'll show a little bit how to approach this assignment. And then we have also definitely time for questions. That's the whole point. I think questions will be primarily through the chat. And but feel free to, yeah, I mean, I think, Trevor, this is primarily for the chat, right? This is a webinar, so you may not be able to show your camera. So we'll do it through the chat. And then I also received some questions from the attendees who signed up. And there were about 40. We have 5 here, so that's yeah. I also sign up for things. All right, so we'll look at A-frame. So A-frame is one of the tools I recommend using throughout this course. And if you have a more web-based background. So if we open aframe.io, which you could do as well here, I'll just actually share. I'll share a few things with you. First of all, I share this link so you can click it and can open it on your computer. And then A-frame, if you haven't seen it, so this is A-frame. So it's one of their examples, their standard example. If you click into the scene and drag your mouse with the left mouse, you can basically adjust your camera perspective, and WASD is like walking or flying around. Actually, here you just walk around. It's not flying around, but it feels like flying around. But the y-axis never changes, so you can walk around. And then one thing they have in this example, which I think is very interesting, is this button called the Visual Inspector. And I'll just go full screen here for a second. So in this Visual Inspector is something that I think we will be using if you work on some of these assignments in a lot more detail. So here you can actually, it's not really an editor in that sense. I mean, you can make changes to the scene right now, just using simple transform tools here, X, Y transformation. And we could rotate this box also a little bit more or less if we wanted to. And then you can go back to the scene and can actually see these changes. So, but next time you load the scene, it's not saved or anything. It's not an editor in the sense that you may be used to from Unity. And so it's a little bit more tedious. There's another thing which I think is very important when we work on assignments is opening the console here. So this can be done in various different ways. I would recommend using the Chrome browser. It actually has the best support right now. I used to recommend Firefox, but actually my example for today, I just couldn't get to run with Firefox. So this is A-frame. And at the end of this office hour, I will share a link with a new collection of YouTube videos where I spend more time actually really explaining a lot of the different things for A-frame and for Unity. So to provide more help as you work on these assignments. And also this is recorded today, and so we can release it to our learners. So we can learn that way. All right, so I just showed you some of the key things which I think are very, very important. And I did mention it in various places in the MOOC, but cannot say it often enough. So there is a keyboard shortcut. Not every scene has this visual inspection button, and this keyboard shortcut depends on your operating system. So on Windows, I press Control-Alt-I when I am in the scene. So I have to be in the scene here. And then I get this inspector loaded. So this on Mac works with Control-Option-I. So that's how things work. And so you can try that out anytime. I can press Control-Alt-I now, and I get the inspector back, and I can just go back to the scene. And this works on actually all A-frame scenes. So if you find one that you think is very interesting, this one has sound. Luckily, I didn't share it. It was a very annoying sound. The sound is not shared, but you heard it anyway through the microphone. You can press Control-Alt-I anytime and then inspect scenes and learn about how they were created. And this one obviously is a good example because it has lots of interesting light sources and I mean, I wouldn't call this a complex scene in the world of VR development, but it is a more complex scene than most A-frame examples that you see on the web. So Control-Alt-I is one of the important things that I think my students always ask about and want to learn and want to be reminded of. So I thought I'll do that. So next we are gonna, so there's a little bit of an overview of some of the things you can see in the inspector. You obviously have the hierarchy similar to Unity, basically some of the components here, including the default stuff, the transforms here. And you have transformation tools, which are used, and they're up there on top. And you can always see an entity that is kind of like selected. And I think one of the other things that I thought I should show in office hours, because, and then we actually speed up very quickly, but I show one more basic thing, which I think is also very important. So I'm going back to A-frame, actually going here, just at the bottom of the screen. Sorry about that. So A-frame IO. I wanted to show one more thing, which is, so let's say I have adjusted this this box like the way I really like it, and like a little bit out and a little bit forward maybe. So Z-axis plus. And I'm also going to do a little bit of rotation. And let's say I've now finally figured out this is really how I'd like it to look. So you do not have to copy paste all these things out. As I said, it's not an editor, but you can press this thing here and it would actually give you code. So if I now open a notepad, I would just get the entity and the transforms. And so this is actually pretty useful. And what doesn't work so well, I mean, technically this also works on the scene here. So if I copy out the scene, I get all this stuff, but the inspector, and actually I can run this in actually as an A scene, not in an editor. So I just wanted to show you that the stuff comes out. But it does insert stuff that you didn't actually specify before the box now, because you didn't touch the material directly. It just generates an empty property, but there's a lot of things that are being inserted by the inspector, even if you really, I was just focused on rotation and maybe a little bit of position. Anyway, so this is useful stuff. I thought I wanted to show that. And I think it came a little short in the MOOC because there's a lot of other stuff I talk about in the MOOC. All right, so let us go to a template. So the basic A-frame template looks like this. It's actually just the example that I showed you, and I will share that one with you as well. So this is here. This is the template that I recommend using for a lot of the assignments, and so you can copy out. Now, a lot of my stuff is on CodePen, and I'm increasingly moving to Glitch. I'm not a pro on CodePen anymore. I stopped paying for it. Glitch is actually one of the platforms that is actually the platform I would recommend for a lot of my A-frame examples, or for your A-frame projects in this course. Easy to share, easy to get feedback from learners, easy to remix other people's stuff, and can be the thing with A-frame. The thing with CodePen is what you don't really see here. A lot of people use CodePen in the wrong way. So they start by typing HTML, body, head, whatnot. But actually what is called HTML here is actually just supposed to be the body. So I'll just actually write the AC. And script includes are hidden. So oftentimes we forget about that. But if you go to settings, and here is the stuff for the head, which is actually, this is how A-frame actually gets into the scene. And for other examples, there will be more includes here. And so make sure that you check out the HTML stuff for the head for any of my examples if you wanted to copy paste them to Glitch. Anyway, other than that, this is the same A-frame scene. It's pretty standard. So not too much to learn about that one. So A-frame is HTML based. So we have pretty, so we start by writing this AC. We need to include A-frame first, and then we may include any other JavaScript libraries to help us, like teleport controls, environment component, all the kinds of things we need for our VR assignments, for example. And in my CodePen library, I have basically a lot of components to help you get started. And I'm also in the process of linking these things a little bit up, a little bit better, and releasing some additional content for the MOOC for all three tools. So today, again, as I said, for those that just came in, this is focused on A-frame today. Okay, so let's get started on the assignments. So I would just quickly want to show you how I would work on these assignments, how I would want you to work on these assignments. So in the third course, we have 3 assignments. We have a 3D scene, we have a VR scene in week 2, and we have an AR scene in week 3. And the 3D scene consists of a few different steps. You sketch out the thing that you want to accomplish first, or you base it on an example, like a movie, a book, a photo, could be your own room. A lot of students always model their own rooms, and that's really cool because you can compare and you can see how tedious it is and where you spend too much time. Do I put the clock in my room or not? Do I have to have the pointers or not? So yeah, and it's a good assignment, it's a good exercise to get started with some of these tools. So we do the 3D scene first. And then we'll learn more in the MOOC. We'll learn more about how to create actually VR content and AR content. But there is a lot of stuff, a lot of different options. So VR, oftentimes people just show a 3D model and are happy, and that is a basic VR scene. A more immersive one would allow you to, I guess, walk around, interact with objects, and there's also then sound and good use of lighting, and creates an atmosphere and just like feels like. So the feeling of immersion is directly connected to the feeling of presence in some sense. If you feel immersed in that scene, and if you feel like feelings of presence would be coming up if it's actually really well done, if it's a realistic scene or it feels like you're transported there. Anyway, so these are concepts that I talk about in the first course. Too much to expand on right now. And AR in week 3, we will learn about marker-based and marker-less AR. So I have examples. And what I'll do in the next few minutes, I'll create a solar system. I'm really into solar systems. And I started this in the second course. I was, if you saw me in the second course, I did a couple of things in the second course. And I want to do a solar system that is inspired maybe by NASA. So NASA has this really cool, you can play with it. I'll copy the link for you. You can play with it. It's actually really quite cool. So it's actually really also very complex to create something like this. But here you have a solar system. And you can, for example, click the sun and you get some information. You can double click the sun, and then it'll actually zoom into the sun and actually show you more information. It's really the place you don't want to be, even in the cold winter right now, depending where you are, obviously. But you can also find Earth, and you can fly. You can basically fly to Earth. I just went back to the sun. I just figured out yesterday, but no, where's my Earth? Here's Earth. So we can also go to Earth, and then from Earth we can also go to the moon. And so obviously their example is really, really advanced compared to what I'll show you, but it is only a 3D scene. So we wouldn't call this a virtual reality. It doesn't actually support tracking the user. And there are 3 key characteristics for virtual reality displays and experiences that I would usually run through. And the way I interact with it is also through a mouse. So it's not direct, it's not natural, it's just indirect. In any case, with A-Frame, we can also create a 3D scene very quickly, and then we can create a VR scene and an AR scene. So I'm inspired by this. And so I created this little mood board for myself, which I essentially just screenshots. You can go to the sun, look at it, and can go to Earth. And so that's what I wanted to create. So then normally in a larger project like this, I would do a lot of steps before I do the things that I show now. And that is really the philosophy of the second course in the XR MOOC, which is really trying. One of the things I try to teach is really how to think about the process and how to think about design, even if we don't have a lot of industrial experience yet. I mean, there are obviously companies in this space, but they don't share their workflows really. And if you get to work with some of them, then you'll learn. But until then, you can do the picture book style Michael approach, which is really sketching out existing experiences, trying out some of the templates I introduced in the second course. For example, this 360 template, where you can have rapid previews in a VR headset, even in a Google Cardboard, or just 360. Holding your phone in front of you, so 360 like this. But here I just show one of the tools I created in research to actually go directly into a 360 preview. Some of the learners reached out. It didn't work on iOS. I know that the Apple support and the AR VR world at the moment is still limited, but hopefully it'll be better at some point. So did I not copy the link? I probably, oh, Trevor is just copy pasting the same things. Okay, cool. All right, and then I would actually do kind of like immersive authoring and all these kinds of things. So that's the point of the second course. Here we want to be a little bit more advanced. So, and the assignment. So the 3D assignment, just like breaking it down in a few steps again, one more time. So the 3D assignment is creating a 3D scene in any of these tools. So I will choose A-frame today. And then in future weeks, and for my future office hours, I will do something on Unity. And then maybe I'll do an office hour on Unreal Engine one day. Okay, so then there should be some kind of template, so a sketch that's provided that I can share with other learners so they know what I'm going towards and can critique me on that. And also it's my own goal. So it's very important that we have a goal whenever we create something for learning. Otherwise, I mean, you can't just say, I learned JavaScript yesterday. You need to tell me how you did it and what you did. What did you try to do? And I'm pretty sure that you didn't look into promises yesterday unless you did something more advanced with JavaScript. So what did you actually learn when you said, I learned JavaScript yesterday? So you can say, yesterday I created a 3D scene in A-frame. It was my first 3D scene, and I had a few 3D primitives in there. That's what I want you to do. And then I increased the fidelity a little bit by adding material to the primitives. I'll show you that. And then also have 3D models in there. So I'll go very quickly through my approach. And then I try out a few different camera angles. I've played around with this a little bit. So the things I show you, I worked on for 3 hours yesterday. So it's not, I'm not able to reproduce the whole thing in 10 minutes here or 15 minutes for you. And of these 3 hours, I probably spent almost an hour finding good 3D models that are appropriate for licensing and showing here in the MOOC, and sorry, in this recording. And actually that was very, very tedious. And at the end, I ask you to add maybe animation slide and sound if you want to look into this. This would actually then start adding stuff on the more immersive side. And so that would actually be very good. So let's skip through this. We just saw this. So my sketch is a concept, is a design concept I developed in the second course, going through all these prototyping stages that I showed in the video before, where you could see me and try out all the different AR, VR tools and sketching and templates. And so my design is based on an existing Google Expeditions experience. Google Expeditions, unfortunately, has been discontinued. So, but there are many solar systems that you can try out. And so I wanted to, like, the user start, maybe if it's an AR scene, then they kind of like scan and they place it somewhere, or they put the marker somewhere. So I was XR agnostic at this planning stage. Really what is very important to me is the sun. Maybe I'll show some data about the sun. Didn't actually prepare this. And I want planets to orbit around the sun. So I'm not going to create a realistic, like NASA style accurate kind of thing. Mine is a little fun, and I want to be able to see sun, Earth, and the moon around the Earth. And I was exploring, for example, I would like to see the Earth at day and at night. And it is interesting then, how do you do that? I mean, normally you don't switch off the sun or something. It just really depends on the rotation and orientation towards the sun, on which side of the Earth we currently have night. But so my simulation is not actually a simulation. It's just a little cute example. But anyway, I was going through this exercise. So I started from my sketch. So this is my sketch. I'm not sure whether I would be comfortable sharing this with all the learners because I could have sketched a little more. In fact, this was actually one of the quick rapid sketches I did in the second course. So maybe I could have annotated a little bit more. But even by looking at it, I mean, you can already see a lot. So there's going to be a sun, there's Earth, moon. Okay, I get it. They're probably going to be on a path. So that's what Michael is going for. Okay, so that's good enough. And then I started creating my solar system. And so now I'm going to share a link with you that hopefully everybody can see. And because it is public, you may be able to actually because it is public, you may be able to actually edit the code. So I would appreciate if I didn't actually make a copy of this. So maybe we just watch for now. But anyway, so you can join in, and I'm probably just sending to panelists. That's why Trevor is sending it to everybody. Cool, thanks, Trevor. That's what I'm doing wrong. Anyway, so in the future, I will send my stuff directly to everyone. And I'm sorry, I didn't notice this before. I never used Zoom in webinar mode. Anyway, here we go. You're coming in slowly. So I'm actually looking at one file here, which is, I should be in my, I want to go into my V2. Hang on, which I was talking too much. Which one do I want to show you? Okay, first I wanted to just like, I had this at some stage in the course. I already showed that. We're going to do a preview here in a new window so you can see a little bit more. So this is my 3D scene as it is like planned out, and I can look at all the planets here, and they just have very basic color. And somewhere here, navigation is a little hard, but somewhere here is Earth. I think Earth is a blue planet. I could decrease the acceleration and stuff. And then I can use the cursor that I have here and actually dwell on this object. And then it says the sun is this, and then I should be able to do the same, maybe with Earth or with some other planets. But anyway, so this is the thing that I created, but I want to take it further now. So, but this would be basically the scene with placeholders. And actually for the next few moments, I want to just focus on a version 2 that I created. So I'm going to share this link with you. Yep, this should be the V2. All right, this should go to everyone now. So I'm actually going to look, focus at this one and just going to hide the files here. And on the right, I also need to enter V2 and then index and then 3D HTML is my example. And so here you can see my solar system on the right. So already, well, I already did it, right? I did it last night, as I said, but it's actually pretty cool, I thought. I'm just surprised that I cannot actually fly into the scene. Well, it should have a solar. Let me just reload this. With WASD, I should be able to fly in there. There's something wrong. 1 second. Failed to load. Well, it is here, but for some reason, let me open this in a new window. Then I can hopefully, okay. So this is how it's supposed to work. So I'll also, if you don't want to look at the code the whole time, I just want to play around with the scene a little bit. This is the link to the scene as it is running in the browser. So this is just my 3D scene. So what I have in here is like I have a sun here, and I have Earth, and Earth is going around the sun. And then I have, I think at the end, I actually have like a little Apollo 11 lunar module. And then there should also be, they should be on the way to the moon. And it's like, I mean, it's rotating a little bit, so it has some basic animations. And then I have created some things. I can press V to show or hide the path. So V for visible. I can do that. And I can press N to make it day and night. And when I do that, I swap out the textures and all these kinds of things. So I actually change the way the world looks. And so I'm basically kind of like maybe the guy on the moon who can switch off the light somehow. And I also then thought about, so what I cannot do as well as NASA does it, obviously they render that side of the Earth like really nicely and really dark, and that side of the Earth and really like it would look like on daylight. But I am not NASA, and I just did this very quickly. And so anyway, this is my prototype. I'm pretty happy. So what I'll do with it, actually, I'll just walk you very quickly through how I created this one. So we're gonna hide the inspector. And so we have about 10 minutes, so I'll be very quick, I guess, or maybe 15 minutes, and then we should start thinking about your questions. All right, so I started, it's a starting point that's shared with you. I'm using A-Frame, the latest version. I'm very happy with A-Frame. I haven't shown you one last thing in the scene that I also implemented, but I'll get to it in a second. Then I did spend quite a bit of time really like figuring out like what's the basic mechanics of having this thing, the Earth go around the sun is very quickly accomplished. So let's just ignore the assets for a second. Let's just look at the solar system. I added the light stuff also later. Initially, I didn't actually have any light in there. I just put a ball in there, which was the sun, and I didn't have any textures or animations. So all that was added. But initially, I just started out from the sun and the Earth and then the moon, and I just placed them in the scene, and then they were static. And then I added all the stuff to really to really work on the assignment. So basically, this is a solution now that includes lighting, that includes animation, and that includes materials. And I got all the materials from NASA. So when you click assets, you will be able to see, for example, my dark earth that I got from a NASA related website is one of the NASA projects. And then I had different versions of Earth, and I went for one that is called Earth 8K. And I added also a normal map. A normal map, you can probably not see this very well here, but basically there is a little bit of information that adds a little bit of fake depth to this texture. This maps nicely together onto the 8K Earth, and so it makes Earth look a little fancy. And I'm gonna actually remove some of the lights. I mean, this 3D scene looks pretty cool. It looks like the way I want it, but it's hard for us to inspect it. So I'm gonna change a few things. It also came with a specular map, but then I couldn't directly use it. It requires different shader, Feng shader, and that's not straightforward in A-frame. So I just ignored the specular map. I got the sun texture, a moon texture, and our Apollo guy, the lunar module. And for the AR portion that I also want to show an ARJS version, I also use the hero marker. So these are the things I'm going to show. And I'm just going to go into the scene and just need to be careful and mindful of my time now. What are the things I really want to show? So I should not try to recreate the scene for you. Even though I think you would learn a lot, it would take longer than the time we have available. So I'll walk you through the things you can learn from this 3D scene. So obviously I'm using fog in here. So that's something we can disable. Then we'll start seeing, immediately we'll start seeing a little bit more. Obviously it's still pretty dark in here. I can also disable the default light. And I have another light in here, which I think is embedded in the sun. It's a point light in the sun. This is the sunlight. And it's actually 2 lines. So I'm gonna just disable these things. And I'm not sure whether it immediately updates for you. And then otherwise the scene is still pretty dark because I actually have black background. And that's something we could also easily change. So if you wanted to change the sky a little bit, so it's down here, we can just like make it white. And then probably it'll look a little bit easier the scene looks a little bit easier to inspect. But anyway, I'm going to undo all this because I did like the looks, but these are some of the components. So I have fogs, lights, and then animations in there. So this suffices all the requirements for the assignment. And I can spend a little bit more time on answering specific aspects about this, but it's a pretty standard 3D scene, and it has only a few components in there. So what did I do? I got all my assets in there, right? So this is the scene I wanted to create. I got all my assets in there. I linked them up so I put all my assets in the assets tag. So the images, I have to copy paste when I upload an image like the sun. So let's look at assets. So let's say I've uploaded the sun texture. Then I go in here. When you upload into Glitch, it just puts them on, it doesn't put them in a subdirectory or something that you may be thinking. No, it actually hosts them on a different online store. And so I copy paste the URL from here, and then I go and find my my sun texture. I call it sun map because technically it's a 360 picture. It would be in my assets that I was hiding before. So here are my assets. Let me just make sure that I can see that now. And then I copy paste that into SRC. And then I have to add this cross origin or anonymous because actually this stuff is hosted elsewhere. If you don't do that, you sometimes have trouble with loading assets on Glitch. So I did all that. And yeah. And then I linked the material to my object. So I gave the texture basically. SRC sun map sets the texture of the sun. So that's the first thing. So actually this, if you really do this and then the assignment asks you to look into 3 objects, you will find a lot of different things you have to learn. So the recommended format with A-frame specifically is GLTF. If you work on this assignment in Unity, it would be FBX. And then Unreal Engine again uses can also use these file formats, but wouldn't recommend GLTF with Unreal Engine. I don't think it's that popular. And FBX, as I said, is the main thing for Unity. So it is very important to figure out like how to host this thing. So there are tools for that. When you download things, so what you often do is like you go to a website like Sketchfab and you try to find like a free lunar model, which is what I did yesterday. It took me more than half an hour. Actually took me probably an hour, to be honest. Initially, I wanted to have the space station, the International Space Station, but that just none of the models were smaller than 40 megabytes. So you have to actually also pay attention, since it's web, to the size. So I then settled on this Luna module here, which I can share with you as well. And we should give credit to the person who created it. So this is 1 billionth LLC. It is actually non-commercial usage. So I pay attention to the license. And then I downloaded this. I packed it. That's very important. Because it came like with a bunch of files, but I'll package a GLTF as a GLB. That's an important step. And I actually also have videos on that, like in more detail on my YouTube playlist that I'll share with you at the end. And then I host it, which is in this case, I just drag and drop it into my glitch project. And then I'll, similar to the textures before, I did link it as an asset item. And I created an entity with the GLTF model. That's all I did for getting the little lunar module between like Earth and Moon. And I didn't get the dimensions right. I think the lunar module would be too big. Anyway, then a final thing that I did for the scene was playing around. The assignment asked you to play around with different camera positions. So I was looking at, far away, I had a camera position where it's focused on Earth. And then I had one where it's actually the camera is attached to the moon. And that's something you can actually do in my scene. So this is the link I shared earlier. And so in this first camera position, I can just like freely position and like fly it to everybody. But then when I press the C key, that's how I've implemented it, I can toggle camera. So now I'm actually a camera that is focused on Earth. It's actually just going with the Earth. It's attached to the Earth at a certain distance. But I still have look controlled, so I can still look around. I have one that is attached to the moon. So now you're like really next to the moon and you can see interesting, just the world looks, the 3D perspective changes a lot. But all I do is I just choose a different camera position, and this one is attached to the moon, and then I still give look controls to the user. And I'll show that in the code as well. The last thing is I implemented an orbit controls, but that doesn't actually always work as expected. So I feel like I have to drag a lot with my middle mouse and zoom in and stuff. So anyway, but the idea of this one was that I have better control over, it just doesn't work so well with the mouse. I think it's better on a tablet. So this last control, this last camera is not so good. I like the first one where I can just like fly around in the scene. So how did I do this? How did I do this? So this is a little bit of code that I wrote, a little bit of scripting at the end. And so I find all the cameras in the scene that I've declared. I actually specify them again. One is called A camera, one is called sun camera, moon camera, and then orbit camera. But the orbit camera is the one that I just didn't demonstrate very well just a second ago. And then I implemented a function that when you press C, so the key press stuff is down here. When you press C, I'll go to the next camera. And I also have, again, toggling paths and have all that in there. So that is actually pretty cool. So I have all these things in my assignment, and you don't have to do this dynamic scripting. You can just like choose 2 camera positions, fly around in the scene, take a screenshot, share it with your learners. You don't actually have to do it programmatically. Obviously, I add a lot of animations. The one thing I think I showed already, when I press N, you can switch. A lot of things happen on when I press N. I actually make the sun semi-transparent because it's like as if it's not there, and I swap out the texture on the Earth for like this night texture, and I change the lighting in the scene. show this one more time. So if you find, if you look at this right now, if I press N, so this is, I swap out the texture on Earth. You can see how it's day and night. And then I also changed the light into a blue light. So not accurate, but I just thought this is a cool solution. So when I press N is my toggle night function. I do a lot of things, and I thought this could be helpful for you to show how you can, for example, change the color of a light, change the opacity of an object, change the material, like swapping out the texture. And then I revert it when I press the N key again. So you have some example code for that as well. It's obviously a lot you can do with JavaScript. Okay, so I'll show two more things. I created a virtual reality version of that, and I am thinking about the time. So I didn't add much more in terms of immersion because I put all my energy already in my 3D scene. It has light, has animation, has a lot of immersion in some sense. So I added a camera rig to this scene that allows me to teleport and look at the world. I did not change the scale much, but I was considering making it larger. And then I didn't add any other lights or sounds because I already did this for the 3D assignment, but I would claim it if I had to be graded by Michael. I would claim it for this assignment. And I have teleportation in there. So I have one example. That is the one thing that I wanted to show you. It is the VR version of this. It actually looks almost the same. It's just the position is a little bit different. I have some cameras removed, and I will try it. I had some issues with the headset before, so if it doesn't work, I'll be sad, but hopefully you won't be too sad. But on my computer, if I press the VR key here, it goes into my headset, and which is currently still launching. So we have to do it one more time. It just actually died. So it's loading here. And I will also make sure that you can see something as soon as I have it. Cool. So it is a little bit, my headset is a little bit weird. So at the moment, it shows me this mouse cursor all the time, this loading mouse cursor. So I couldn't fix this in time, but I promise when I press this often enough, it actually worked. And I have some kind of bug with my headset at the moment, but it just doesn't want to do it at the moment. So let me reload one more time. Yeah, I always get this error. So there is it worked on my other computer. Have you heard other people say this? It just doesn't want to work. Okay, it is not as impressive, but I mean, then I can at least show you that I can very quickly go into VR here and actually see it when it's loading. And I'm wondering whether I just need to give the browser more time, but actually this is a pretty powerful computer, so it shouldn't be the issue. It just doesn't want to get away. I may have to do some update to this headset. So this is, in some sense, it's a little bit unnice VR version. So I'll record this afterwards, deliver it in my YouTube playlist, and I'll show you that this VR version also works, and it's interesting. You would be standing right in there. And then I will also release a few more videos. I'll just go over some of the additional materials I will release as part of my YouTube playlist to help you work on some of these assignments. Obviously, I'm running out of time already, and I want to answer some of your questions. So for the VR project setup, what I did was I used a VR template, the one that I have shared in, as it looks like this one. This is the VR template, and it has like controllers built in. And actually, when you run the scene on a good day, it would allow you. No, full screen doesn't work, but it would allow you to go directly into the headset, like when I press the VR button here. That's how it used to work on my computer, just not today for office hours. You get the controllers, you can teleport around, and I'll get my solar system also to work on this computer. It's going to be after office hours, I'm afraid. Anyway, the template is good because it gives you all these starting points, allows you to teleport around, and then obviously the content is something you would swap out. So I would recommend starting from the template. And then some of the common controls that I put in there is super hands for hand manipulation. And that's something I also added to my VR version of my solar system and teleport controls. And then I can run it in two modes. One is if you have a quest, as an example, you can go to the quest in VR, go to the Oculus browser and load the URL that I shared with you earlier, the same one, the index VR. Or like connect it to the computer. I just used a Rift S, but I could connect the Quest directly via USB and then use Oculus Link and then would have it also connected as before. In fact, I have the Quest here as a backup, but I also didn't get it to work with the Quest anyway. Anyway, so a couple of things about the template that these slides I can also share with learners, but basically this is the couple of key things that I added to my VR scenes. I gave it a camera rig so I can move around. I gave it left and right hand. I didn't use laser controls. I used hand controls. So you see hands instead of like lasers coming out of your controllers. So I see virtual representations of hands. It's not actually hand tracking as you have it on the Quest 2. Like with finger tracking, it's actually just you still hold controllers, but instead of the controllers, you see hands, you see big virtual hands. And so this is the template. I have a separate template for the new hand tracking that just came out. Maybe we have some questions about that. And so super hands is a component that I usually use, and I cannot show right now what you can do with it in my solar system, but I will fix it and provide this video. But you can essentially grab the solar system and place it and scale it. And super hands has a little bit of a setup. So there's a couple of things to pay attention to, but basically you need physics so that we can detect collision when you grab objects, etc. And you also need to specify the objects that are manipulatable. So you're draggable, for example. And if you have physics, so if you enable physics and have dynamic objects falling down, didn't make sense in my solar system, but then you also need kind of like an area where they can fall onto, like a plane with a static body. So this is some of the super hand stuff. And I didn't include my screenshot here because it didn't work. And then I wanted to show very quickly the AR scenes, and in 1 minute I'll be done with my little example here, but we have recorded it. So the AR scene is creating an AR scene. Again, one of the tools, I choose A-frame, add the AR module, or ARJS actually. So I guess I grabbed the marker-based AR module / plugin. Okay, well, I didn't specifically write these instructions for A-frame, but in A-frame I would need to choose between ARJS, which is marker-based AR, and AR module, which is basically using AR core on an Android phone. With the current browsers and the lack of support from Apple, you have a very hard time getting markerless AR on the web working in iOS. So if you're using Chrome on Android with AR core, you can do this. So basically, these are the setups. So first I'll show you A-frame with ARJS, and then with a Firefox webcam here. So this is the ARJS template that I'll just, while I connect my camera here, I just play this. So you get a sense for what I'm going to show you. I'm going to have my solar system just in 1 second right in front of me. So we can move the marker around and the content would adapt. So in my ARJS version of my scene, I have adapted the scene, scaled it down to make it appear above the marker. 1 second. Just connecting a webcam so we can actually run my solar system. So I'll show you my solar system. It'll look like this. Basically has a few things, but it'll just have the solar system appear above the marker, and it's kind of cute. I have the marker here, so it's my hero marker, and I'm gonna just like very quickly run it. So it is my ARJS version, and it's already working here, but I'm gonna go full screen. I'm going to allow camera access. This one sharing with you wouldn't make so much sense. You wouldn't have the marker, I guess. But anyway, so as I point at the marker, I have my solar system. It's still the same scene. If I start pointing at things, I may occlude the marker and then it'll stop tracking. But Earth is right now is here. Go full screen. And I have the sun there. And basically, I also inserted a virtual representation of the marker so you can see how well it's actually tracked. If I occlude the marker, I mean, a lot of my lectures are about that, so I'm not going to go through all that now. But basically, I also have the functions here that would be just on a mobile phone. I can show or hide the path, so I can use touch on a mobile phone if I go to this URL on a mobile phone. And I can change it to between day and night. And it's just an interesting way to look at it. If I had more time, I would probably connect with my smartphone to the Zoom channel and show you the AR version, markerless version. But what I do instead is I show you the last step. I also created a markerless version, which uses just A-frame AR module, which is built into A-frame, so no ARJS. And I ran it directly on my phone. So I'm going to this URL v2 index AR, not index ARJS, but it's the fourth file that I have in my example, index AR. And then I created a DOM overlay, so I can actually have a 2D interface on top of a 3D scene when I go into this AR button. So I'm going to press the AR button on the phone, and then I'll see it like I don't have any marker anymore. It's just like floating in the world, and I can press these buttons to switch and toggle between the paths on and off and between day and night. So I'll just provide additional videos for that, even my VR version when I get it running. So this is a YouTube playlist that I've started to create. I will share this link with you right now. It should be public. It is public. So, and this will be shared with all learners. And so in this YouTube playlist, I started adding when my students in my residential courses ask me, or when some of the MOOC learners reach out to me and ask me, I often create a little explanation or an additional video. So here I have an introduction to A-frame, working with 3D models in A-frame, creating my little solar system, at least part one. I'll add a little bit more to it. Working with Unity and then creating the solar system in Unity. And I've already started recording, doing the Unity, again, my solar system. I'll just stick with this example. Because it connects nicely to the second course, and I would also add recordings for doing it with Unreal Engine. So this is the, we started out with a few tips, focused on A-frame today, didn't get everything to show and work that I wanted. I had probably more planned than we have time, but now I'm going to look at questions as well. And we have 10 more minutes for your questions. And we will just like have these also recorded, but I'll stop sharing and I look at the Q&A. So we currently have, I see one open question. Hello, I'm currently doing a VR project at my workplace. It's an immersive storytelling using, so experience using VR, and it is for a younger audience. I have implemented, so it's a very specific question, I think, to give instruction how to navigate the world, etc. I have implemented an instruction pop-up as a UI, but I was wondering, do I set the scene and then have the instruction pop-up to occur? Or do I have the instruction pop up before setting the scene to reduce friction? So this is an interesting question. So don't worry, it's not specifically just A-frame, but so onboarding into a VR experience and what do you show first to a user is actually very interesting. So I do think that the idea of pop-ups in virtual reality is a very 2D way of thinking about an experience. It is not recommended. However, in some web-based experiences, actually specifically for A-frame, what I often do is actually I need the user to click into the scene or touch before they run it, because otherwise the browser wouldn't play sound and stuff. It requires user interaction. So a very common thing is actually to have some kind of like instruction or at least welcome message that would go away. Maybe you saw that for my Detroit Zoo example. It would take too long to find it now. But so in general, I would design the experience not with pop-ups. Don't really have a, there's no idea of a model dialogue or pop-up in VR, right? In virtual reality, the user is usually 6 degrees of freedom. can look at whatever they want. So you should think about nesting the instructions into the experience. So what you often see, for example, when it comes to just like how to use controller menus, you see like little tooltips sticking out that follow the controllers in virtual reality. And that is a very good way of onboarding. And you could imagine similar things like the first time you pick up an object, you actually build that into the experience. I think, to be honest, also in the experience that I've seen being created here at the university, the common development process is we build out this really cool experience that only the designer can use. We don't have time for user testing. And so now how do we get it out to users? So we do a little bit of an onboarding thing, or we show like a pop-up or something. But that actually doesn't really build the mental model of the user. They watch a video or see some instructions, and then they still have to they have to make the transfer from that into the 3D, into the VR world. So the best way this is done is actually incorporating the onboarding directly into the VR world. So San, thank you for the question. And while this sounds like a lot more work, obviously for you, because it's not just a simple pop-up thing. So I would say if a simple interface, a simple pop-up is enough, then maybe it's not that complex an interface and you don't have to work too hard on this. But otherwise, if you are developing a complex 3D game, for example, a VR game or AR game, so I'm thinking of Half-Life Alyx, and I showed some of these examples in my MOOC, then you would actually build that into the experience. And so no pop-ups. Pop-ups are 2D, and we shouldn't think of pop-ups in 3D and in VR and in AR. That's what I say, but if you look around, you will see a lot of people that show them anyway, because the AR VR worlds are created by people that have primarily trained in 2D, not in 3D. And we are all figuring this out together. And maybe I would answer this question differently next year. So cool. 2D as possible. Well, this gives me a great insight. Yeah. So it's like, it gives you the insight into how I think about these things. But from a designer perspective, you know what? The first thing I would try to do is see whether a simple explanation that is floating somewhere in context is sufficient, that the user can click away and so they figure it out. And what is even better is if there is a little video or something that shows how you interact with the 3D content. That is really good onboarding. But we don't actually have all the capture tools usually to prepare these things nicely. So I stopped sharing my screen. I received some additional questions, but please feel free to type them into the chat as well. Anything that comes up right now, just type it in. I'm just going to look at some of the things that Trevor sent to me. Trevor is the person hosting us today, and he works with academic innovation, and he prepared us nicely by sharing information with me. And so some of the questions were about accessibility. AR technology is far more accessible than people wanting to complete AR. What trends do I see emerging in augmented reality? So first of all, I see one important trend is actually, while initially in my course, I teach really the thinking differently about VR and AR, but in fact, the Oculus Quest 2, so that maybe many of you have, it's a relatively affordable device now. It is technically a virtual reality. It's an occluded headset, a virtual reality headset, but it actually has a lot of cameras. And so they have a new few things coming out, initially just built into this for safety, which is called pass-through. So when you double tap, you have the device on, you double tap, you can see the world through the cameras. And now it'll do some of this automatically when, for example, people walk into your scene, like you have children at home or you sharing the place with friends or a partner. It would sense this and actually alert you of their them being there. And you can use this mode called pass-through, which we're doing currently in a research project, really also to help to use VR primarily to prototype AR experiences. And I suspect that in the next version of the Quest, the cameras here, which are currently grayscale, will be much better resolution and in color. So you would actually have a see-through display. So and then at that point, I think AR technology is really becoming more accessible, because right now the only thing that's accessible in terms of AR is mobile AR, but it's very limited. So that was one question. And then we can take one more maybe, unless there's anything in the chat here. is there a common way for a specific technique to fine-tune plane recognition for AR Foundation in Unity? So, so AR Foundation is using AR Core or AR Kit, which is markerless AR, which is the one example that I showed earlier. And that's a question I can actually respond to maybe in a future office hour. But the quick answer is the best. So for some of my videos in the MOOC, I wanted to have a clean white background so that my learners don't see all the mess that's going on in here and feel like Michael is so organized. But then if the headset is just plane detection against the white monochromatic kind of surface is actually very, very difficult. So the best thing to improve plane detection is actually to make your environment noisy. So I put some pencils on my white poster board, and it looked like I was really working on an interesting desk kind of area, and that actually improved the tracking because I gave more features to be tracked. Okay, and then maybe a final question. What are some hurdles that when we overcome them will change how we interact with XR? So that's a very interesting forward-thinking question. So one big issue right now is, and this office hour is focused on WebXR and A-Frame, and one big hurdle is that, for example, Apple is not really supporting it on their browsers. So once we have more universal support across all kinds of platforms, I do think that web-based AR and VR experiences will be very, very powerful. Like, I mean, in my experience working with students doing Unity and Unreal Engine projects, it's just so tedious to exchange and look into their things. And like, yes, we can use GitHub and we can share source code and blah, blah, I know all that, but it's just different if I can share a link. And the web ecosystem is also interesting because it will provide a safety layer dealing with issues of privacy and security that I think is very, very important. So to me, one of the biggest hurdles is actually how we have certain vendors stand in the way of standardization of the WebXR standard. And so if Apple were more on board and actually pushed it harder together, I think it would actually be a really, really good improvement. And we could see a lot more widespread usage of VR and AR across the web. And that if history is a good indicator, I mean, the way the web evolved was just through user-generated content, the ability of giving people the ability to create things on the web through simple tools like WordPress, for example, or jQuery and Bootstrap. So they could be similar toolkits and tools for people to really make this a good, and hopefully also the browser vendors have to work on making it a safe place. But I think this is one of my biggest hurdles. It's also driven a little bit by some of the research I'm looking at. There are other hurdles like the display factor, the battery, the input is limited, blah, blah. Yeah, you could answer all of these as well. But from an evolution perspective, I think getting the WebXR standard really moving it forward, and that is related to this office hour, I think it's the best answer I can give today. So thank you for coming today and attending this office hour. I had a lot of fun. I hope this is useful for not only for you here, but then also for other learners who will watch this recording. And I will hopefully by that time have made up or followed up on all the promises I made. So I get my VR version of my solar system working. I'll add a few more videos to my YouTube playlist, and I will expand all three portions, and these will be linked back into the third course. Now, we have to keep in mind that I'm a professor at Michigan, so my primary responsibility is doing research and teaching here. And the MOOC was actually just a project that I was approached. Would I want to do this? Because I've done a few online courses in the past. And I really enjoyed working with the people here that are also on the call, some of them from academic innovation at the University of Michigan. And so we put together this XR MOOC, and it is interesting. So we have about 10,000 people that are looking at it. I'm not sure who is enrolled and what they're doing really, but I looked at some of the honors track assignments. I would recommend you also look at the honors track. So the honors track in all three courses is actually other learners creating interesting experiences in all three tools. And over the next year, I will try to build a little bit more of a community around the XR MOOC, a little bit of a community in the office hours here as a start. And then maybe we can explore some other things if people are really interested in learning more that way. So thanks everybody for coming. And yes, so have a good one, and bye-bye.